The couch was still warm. That was the first thing I noticed when I walked in. Not the half-empty glass of wine, not the keys tossed crooked on the floor, not even the soft thump of her boots lying near the heater. Just that the couch, the one I hadn't sat on since Thursday, was warm. Recently used. She wasn't home. Not yet. I didn't turn on any lights. Just stood there, in the doorway, listening. The house was humming with silence. The kind of silence that dares you to break it. I stepped over a heel. Just one. The other was missing. There was a shirt I didn't recognize on the armrest. Pale blue, too large. Still creased like it had been peeled off in a hurry. I didn't touch it. Didn't need to. The digital clock blinked 3:06 a.m. She had said she'd be back by 11. I walked slowly to the bedroom door. Still closed. Still untouched. She hadn't come in here yet. That told me everything. The couch. The wine. The shirt. She was planning to shower before facing me. But she hadn't expected me to return early. And she definitely didn't expect what was waiting in the hallway closet. Because I hadn't just come home early. I had help. And that help was holding a phone. The screen was still recording. The hallway light flicked on behind her just as she stepped inside. She didn't see me. Not at first. She stood there for a moment, back turned, tossing her keys into the bowl by the door like nothing was wrong in the world. She didn't even take her heels off. Only one was still on anyway. Her other foot made a soft slap against the wood floors as she walked toward the couch, humming something off-key. A song I didn't recognize. A tune I didn't want to. And then, as she bent down to grab the shirt she'd left draped over the armrest, she stopped. It was instinct. Animal-like. Her whole body tensed. She knew something was off. The air was too still. Too silent. That's when she turned toward the bedroom and saw that the door was slightly open now. I never leave the door open. That's when her eyes flicked to the hallway closet, also ajar. And that's when I spoke, finally, from the darkness behind the kitchen island. Lose something. She gasped so hard I thought she'd drop right there. She stumbled back, clutching the shirt like it was armor. What? How? Why are you home? I stepped into the light. Calm. I wasn't going to yell. Not yet. I could ask you the same, I said. Except I already know the answer. Her lip twitched. Her hand went up, brushing hair behind her ear. That little nervous tick. Same one she used the night she lied about staying late to finish a wedding layout. I had checked. The wedding had been canceled due to rain. You don't understand, she said quickly, voice trembling. It's not what it looks like. I nodded. Then explain. Silence. I could feel her brain scrambling for a version of events that might make sense. Some fantasy where the shirt belonged to a coworker who spilled soup. Or the wine was for a client who left early. Or the couch was warm because she'd fallen asleep watching TV, alone, fully clothed, and missing one shoe. But no excuse came. Just wide eyes and stammered breath. Then, behind her, another voice entered the scene. You might want to tell him the truth, Darla, it said. Her face drained of color. She turned slowly, and there he was, standing in our hallway, holding up the phone. The same guy from the rooftop. Only now he wasn't laughing. He wasn't smiling. And he wasn't alone either. Because right behind him was her sister. For a few long seconds, no one moved. The hallway light buzzed above them, flickering just enough to make everything feel warped and dreamlike. Or maybe it was just my nerves finally catching up to the rest of me. I stood there, heart pounding so loudly I thought they'd hear it. My wife stood frozen between me and the two people behind her. One holding a phone, still recording. The other holding something even worse. A printed folder. One of those old-school types with tabs and post-its and a worn spine. And I swear to you, just seeing that folder gave me the worst chill of my life. Why is Valerie here? Darla finally asked, her voice breaking at the edges. She looked over her shoulder like she hadn't already seen the answer. Valerie stepped forward, and I saw something in her I'd never seen before. Not anger. Not vengeance. Disgust. I gave you 3 chances, Valerie said coldly. 3. I watched you lie to him for months. I bit my tongue when you flirted with Braden at Mom's barbecue. I stayed quiet when you left Otis alone at the ER with a kidney stone and blamed it on traffic. Darla flinched like she'd been slapped. I didn't come here for revenge, Valerie continued. I came here for him. She turned to me. You deserve to know everything. My throat was dry. I couldn't speak. My knees were locked. I wanted to sit, but I couldn't take my eyes off Darla. She was shaking now. Her free hand clenched the mystery shirt tighter like it would protect her from what was coming. Valerie dropped the folder onto the coffee table. It landed with a flat thud. Texts, screenshots, voicemails, even receipts. Darla gasped. You went through my stuff? No, Valerie snapped. He gave it to me. And that's when I realized the second bomb hadn't dropped yet. The man beside her, the same one I had seen her kiss near the parking lot weeks ago, cleared his throat and finally spoke. His voice was low, hoarse, and unexpectedly remorseful. I didn't know she was married, he said. Not at first. Darla spun to him. Are you serious right now? He didn't even look at her. His eyes were on me. I met her at a hotel bar 2 months ago, he went on. She said her name was Ella. Said she was newly divorced, rebuilding her life, and not ready for anything serious. We hooked up a few times. Then I saw you with her last week at the grocery store. That's when I realized. Darla's face turned scarlet. You don't understand. I tried to confront her, he said, but she shut me down. So I reached out to Valerie. I thought she could help you see what was really going on. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to, because Darla wasn't looking at me anymore. She was backing away slowly, like the room was shrinking in on her. Her mouth opened and closed, but the words wouldn't come. Finally, she dropped the shirt and whispered, You shouldn't have shown him that. Then she ran into the bedroom and slammed the door so hard a picture fell off the wall. And I just stood there, staring at that door, knowing I wasn't ready for what came next. Because inside that folder was something I hadn't expected, something she'd been hiding from everyone. The folder was heavier than I expected. I don't know why that mattered, but it did. It wasn't just a few sheets. It wasn't just gossip or screenshots. It was a story, a layered, ugly, personal story, and the deeper I dug, the more the room seemed to tilt sideways. I sat on the edge of the couch. Valerie stayed standing, arms crossed. The other man, I still didn't know his name, stepped back like he didn't want to see this part. Like even he hadn't read everything in the folder. The first page wasn't a text message. It wasn't a selfie or a date-stamped email. It was a printed form, a scan, a medical document. And in the top right corner, just above a blurred-out patient ID, was a name I didn't recognize. Jared Salton. I blinked at it. The form was for an ultrasound, abdominal scan, follow-up consultation, referred by Dr. P. Mathers. And the date? Less than 3 weeks ago. I looked up at Valerie. Who is this? She hesitated. Her jaw tightened. Then she reached forward and flipped 3 more pages into the folder. Read that, she said, softer now. It was a printed message thread. Not from Darla's phone, but from some messaging app one didn't know she used. Telegram? Signal? Something encrypted. It started harmlessly enough. A conversation about when to meet, where to park, what wine to bring. But then it twisted. Him? You sure he doesn't know? Her? He has no clue. I barely look at him these days. Him? You're not going to tell him, are you? Her? Tell him what? That I got pregnant with someone else's kid? I stopped breathing. My fingers went cold. I reread it. Twice. My eyes refused to believe what was there in black and white. Valerie placed her hand gently on my shoulder, like she was afraid I'd break apart. She was going to terminate, she said. I found the appointment slip in her car weeks ago. It was tucked inside a planner under the passenger seat. She didn't go through with it, at least, not that day. But then she started calling out of work, canceling weekends with Mom. She said she was dealing with migraines. I couldn't process it. The timeline, the betrayal, the sheer boldness of it all. She was sleeping in my bed every night, kissing my cheek, using my debit card to order takeout while she planned appointments behind my back. You think it's his? I asked numbly. Valerie shook her head. No, Jared isn't him. I blinked. Wait, what? That's what I was trying to tell you, she said. She's not just cheating. She's overlapping them. There's more than one. That guy. She nodded toward the hallway. He's just one of 3. Suddenly, the weight of the folder made sense. It wasn't a folder. It was a grave. A grave for everything I thought I knew. I didn't cry. I didn't even shout. I just stood up and walked to the bedroom door. My hand hovered over the knob. Then I heard her on the other side. Not crying, not apologizing. She was on the phone, whispering, You can't call me this late. I told you he's still here. I'll message you when he leaves. And that's when something inside me finally snapped. I didn't knock, didn't speak, didn't hesitate. I turned the knob and pushed the bedroom door open slow enough to make the hinges groan. Darla was sitting cross-legged on the edge of the bed, the phone still pressed against her ear, her hair tangled around one shoulder like she'd been pulling at it. She was in a silk robe I didn't recognize. Probably new. Probably bought with my money. Her back straightened the moment she saw me. Her mouth opened like she was about to shout, but no words came out. The voice on the other end of the call was still talking. I could hear him clearly. Darla? Babe? You there? I didn't need to know who he was. His voice said enough. Young. Confident. A little too casual with the word babe. Darla slowly lowered the phone from her ear, eyes locked on me like she was facing something ancient and dangerous. She didn't even hang up, just tapped the screen, turned it face down on the comforter, and stood up. You weren't supposed to hear that, she said. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was the first thing I'd heard from her all night that sounded even remotely honest. I wasn't supposed to hear a lot of things, apparently, I replied. Like the name Jared, or the word termination, or telegram, for that matter. Her eyes flicked toward the door behind me, calculating. Not afraid, just measuring her chances. How far was Valerie? Was the guy still here? Could she twist the story fast enough to bury it? I can explain, she started, taking one careful step forward. Not everything in that folder is what it looks like. Then explain why 3 different men think they're the only one. Her expression cracked. I made mistakes, Otis. She broke off, pacing toward the nightstand, one hand on her temple like it physically hurt her to be exposed. You shut down after your surgery. You stopped talking. We stopped laughing. I felt alone. I was lonely. So you created a harem? No. She snapped, then caught herself. Softer now. It wasn't like that. I didn't mean for it to spiral. It was supposed to be just once. And then what? She didn't answer, but the answer was already all over her face. Then she got addicted to the attention, the lies, the thrill. I looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time in years, I saw someone I didn't know. I didn't even recognize the way she stood, the way she covered her left wrist with her right hand. She used to hold my hand with that one. Now it shook on its own. Do you love him? I asked quietly. She looked at the floor. The one on the phone. Her eyes remained down. The one in the hallway. Still nothing. Jared. That's when she broke. Her legs buckled slightly as she sat down hard on the bed. I didn't think it would go this far. I thought I could manage it. I thought I could control who knew what. Keep it separate. I stepped back, disgusted. You made a spreadsheet of your own betrayal. Otis, please. No. I turned toward the door. But I didn't leave. Not yet. I had one more thing to say. One of them is coming back here, I said. But it's not for you. It's for the paternity test. We're doing it tonight. She looked up, panic blooming like a bruise across her face. No, you can't. I haven't even. You don't get to decide anymore. I cut in. You lost that privilege when you turned me into background noise. And then I left the room. Behind me, she started crying. But I didn't believe it. Because I've heard her fake cry before. And this wasn't even her best performance. Valerie didn't look up as I re-entered the living room. She was seated at the dining table now, arms folded, phone resting in front of her like it weighed something more than plastic and circuits. The guy, still unnamed, still trying to blend into the shadows, stood near the window, watching Darla's car parked crooked in the driveway. I could tell he was rethinking every decision that led him here. She's calling someone else, I said, probably trying to warn him. Valerie didn't answer. She simply tapped the screen of her phone and turned it toward me. Before you say anything else, she said, you need to hear this. I hesitated. I was so tired. Not physically, I'd barely moved all night. But mentally, I felt like someone had scooped my brain out and left it under a heat lamp. Still, I reached for the phone. It was an audio file, titled simply, March 12th, 11:48 p.m. I pressed play. The voice that came through wasn't Darla's. It was mine, and I knew immediately where it was recorded, our bedroom, about a month ago. She'd told me she was going to take a late-night bath and asked me to rest. She needed space. I remember lying in bed, staring at the ceiling, thinking she just needed time to breathe. But what I heard now made my stomach turn. Me, you're distant lately. I feel like I'm talking to a locked door. Her, whispering, laughing, you talk too much when you're insecure. Me, I'm your husband. Her, you're also exhausting. Every time I come home, I have to shrink to fit your comfort zone. There was a silence. Then a third voice entered, one that wasn't mine. Male, smirking. Him, you sure he's asleep? Her, he's always asleep. Emotionally, anyway. Then the unmistakable sound of a kiss. I paused the recording. Valerie watched me carefully. I found that on her old phone. She left it at Mom's over the holidays. Never wiped it. I didn't speak. I couldn't. The man by the window turned around, guilt all over his face. That wasn't me. Obviously, I muttered. I stopped counting at 3. And then Valerie said something that changed everything. She bragged about it, Otis. To her friends. To me, once, when she was drunk. She said you were too slow to notice. That it was your fault for never evolving. She laughed about how easy it was to keep the versions of her separate, how she wore different perfumes depending on which man she was going to see. I closed my eyes. That explained it. The smell. The half-finished bottles. Vanilla. Jasmine. Something citrusy and unfamiliar. I thought she was experimenting. I thought she was finding herself again. She was. Just not for me. I don't know what to do anymore, I said finally. I feel like I'm living in someone else's body. Valerie leaned forward. Her voice dropped. Then take it back. I looked up. She doesn't expect you to. That's how far gone she is, she said. She thinks you'll cry, beg, sit through some therapy podcast while she deletes a few contacts and plays victim. But you don't have to be that man anymore. And then she handed me something I hadn't expected, a second folder. This one thinner. But inside were printed copies of legal documents. Drafts. Divorce papers. I had a friend at the firm prep them weeks ago, Valerie said. In case you ever found out. In case you ever needed an escape route. You just have to sign. I took the folder and opened the first page. My name was already typed out. So was hers. The silence stretched. And then from down the hallway came the sound of the bedroom door unlocking. Darla stepped into view. She had changed into a clean hoodie and leggings. She was holding her phone. Her face was pale but dry. No more tears, real or fake. She stared at the folder in my hands. And without blinking, she said, "If you think this ends with paperwork, you really never knew me." Darla didn't flinch when she saw the divorce papers. She didn't beg, didn't panic, didn't cry. She smiled. Not the sweet kind of smile. Not even sarcastic. It was cold, calculated. A kind of confidence I hadn't seen before. Like she'd expected this moment to come and already planned 12 steps past it. You think a folder and a few signatures will undo what's been done? She asked, her voice low, eerily calm. You think you're the only one who's been preparing for this? I didn't respond. Neither did Valerie. The man near the window shifted uncomfortably, but he stayed silent too. We were all watching her like she was a burning fuse, unsure of what exactly was about to explode. I've been ahead of you since last summer, she said, slowly stepping into the room. You didn't notice when I stopped using the joint account. You didn't question why the car title got refinanced in my name. You didn't even raise an eyebrow when I got a new insurance policy. I narrowed my eyes. What policy? She tilted her head. Life. The room dropped about 10 degrees. She wasn't threatening me. Not directly. But the message was there, hanging in the air like smoke. Valerie stood up. That's enough. Darla ignored her. Her gaze was locked on me. You want to talk about betrayal? About who broke what first? Let's not pretend you were perfect, Otis. I blinked. Excuse me. Emotionally unavailable. Dead in the eyes for years. Always retreating into your workshop. Always choosing silence over conversation. Do you know what that does to a woman? Now she was shifting the blame. Rewriting history. Spinning the story so that I'd come out looking like the ghost and she the victim. I gave you my best years, she continued. And all I got in return was slow suffocation. And when I finally reached for air, you decided I was the monster. I stood up, breathing hard. You didn't reach for air, Darla. You reached for someone else's bed. Repeatedly. Her smile didn't fade. And yet you stayed. Even now, you're still standing there trying to hurt me with facts instead of just walking away. Valerie was done. She walked toward Darla with her phone held out. Then explain this, she said. Another recording. Darla snatched the phone, glanced at the screen, and paled. For the first time, the mask cracked. This is illegal, she whispered. You recorded yourself, Valerie replied. You uploaded it to your shared drive. Forgot to log out on Mom's laptop. I stepped closer. What's on it? Darla didn't answer, but she didn't need to, because Valerie turned the volume up and pressed play. The recording began with laughter. Darla's voice. Her real voice. Not the one she used to defend herself. Not the version polished for social media, but the raw one. Exhausted, mean, unfiltered. Honestly, I don't even care anymore. Otis wouldn't leave if I set the bed on fire. He's so desperate to feel needed. I could cheat in front of him, and he'd still say it's his fault. And the best part? He has no idea what's coming. There was a pause. Then another voice, a woman. Unfamiliar. You're actually going to go through with it? Of course, Darla answered. By the time I'm done, I'll have the house, the accounts, and the pity. All he'll have is a therapist who nods too much. I didn't realize I was shaking until Valerie gently took the phone from my hand. The room was dead silent. And Darla, who had spun her web for months, was finally caught in it. But she didn't scream. She didn't fall apart. She just looked at me with one final act of venom. You always needed someone else to speak for you, she said. I'll make sure that's written in the divorce petition. I stared at her for a long moment. Then calmly, I turned, walked to the kitchen counter, and pulled out the envelope I'd prepared weeks ago, back when I still suspected but had no proof. Inside was a flash drive, and on that drive, a backup of everything. Every message, every recording, every lie. I handed it to Valerie without a word. And then I looked back at Darla and said just 6 words. You forgot who built this house. The scream she let out wasn't theatrical. It was real, animal, cornered, and it told me more than words ever could. Darla lunged for the flash drive, but Valerie stepped between us so fast it startled even me. The man by the window finally spoke up, not to Darla, but to me. She told me you hit her, he said softly. The room froze. Darla's mouth fell open, words forming but not escaping. She said you were controlling, that she was scared of you. I didn't even blink. I just shook my head slowly. Did she tell you that before or after the hotel? Before or after she asked you to help move money from the joint account into a safety fund? His eyes widened. He looked at Darla. She was frozen in place. You used all of us, he whispered. Every single one. I had no choice, she shot back, her voice cracking. You think I wanted to live that life? Waiting for Otis to finally become something? I was trying to survive. No, I said calmly. You were trying to conquer. You saw empathy as a weakness and kindness as an opportunity. You lied because it was easier than growing. She laughed bitterly. So what now? You'll expose me? Ruin me? Make me another sob story on your Reddit account? Valerie stepped forward and placed the flash drive into her purse. No, she said. We're not giving you that kind of power. You don't get to be the star of this story anymore. I nodded. You get to disappear. Quietly. Legally. With exactly what's fair and nothing more. Darla looked at me like she couldn't believe this was happening. And for the first time, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Peace. Because this wasn't revenge. It was release. 3 weeks later, the divorce was filed and uncontested. Valerie's lawyer expedited the process. The documents were signed without court drama, without ugly fights, without her dragging things out. She didn't have the leverage she thought she had anymore, and she knew it. The flash drive never had to be published, but it was handed off to the appropriate financial investigators. Turns out, a few of her business withdrawals had dipped into questionable territory. I didn't press charges. I didn't have to. Life would take care of her in ways I no longer needed to witness. The house. I sold it. I didn't want to keep the echo of her anymore. I used the money to move 2 states away, to a quiet, coastal town where I rented a cottage from an older couple who liked to talk about blueberries and ocean fog. I started building furniture again, this time for people who actually appreciated the work. Valerie visited twice. Once to check on me, and once just to say thank you. We talked. A lot. Not romantically. Not yet, and maybe not ever. But about life. About identity. About how easy it is to forget who you are when someone constantly convinces you you're nothing. And one morning, I sat on the porch of that little cottage, coffee in hand, sun rising behind the mist, and I smiled to myself. Because for the first time in years, I didn't wonder where she was, or who she was with. I didn't need closure from her. I had it from me. I was no longer just the man she betrayed. I was the man who walked away before she could finish the next lie.